Fundamentals of handicapping. The course rating system. The USGA course rating system now becomes the course rating system for the entire world. Course rating system addresses the portability of handicaps by adjusting the player's index according to the relative difficulty of the golf course being played. This is not a new concept for us in the United States. For much of the world, it is a new concept. As a refresher, what is a course rating? It is the playing difficulty of a golf course for scratch golfers under what are termed normal course and weather conditions. As we know, it is expressed as the number of strokes taken to one decimal place, primarily based on yardage. There are other obstacles that do come into play that affect the scoring difficulty for a scratch player. While most people in this country are familiar with the course rating, when our team goes out to do the work, there is also another rating that is calculated. It is a bogey rating. It is not something that we publicize, but it is extremely important in the overall process. The bogey rating is the evaluation of the playing difficulty of a golf course for bogey golfers under normal course and weather conditions. Here you can see on this slide, the bogey rating is 95.4. The slope rating can be calculated for any set of tees, and the two values that are needed are the course rating and the bogey rating. It's a combination of those values that allow the CDGA to calculate the slope rating for a set of tees. Course handicap. This is a relatively new concept in that the course handicap will be the number of strokes a player receives to play down to par of the tees being played. You will see here that the word par is in italics, and that is because for the first time in many, many years, par has become part of the formula. And as you will see as we move through this, the term par will be used in several different points. So the new formula, and this is not something that you necessarily need to memorize, but the new formula is to calculate a course handicap is the handicap index times the slope rating divided by 113. And you will now see in red on this slide, you add the course rating minus par. And that is new. It will give each golfer a course handicap. This chart shows course information for a golf course that has 4 sets of tees, varying in length from slightly more than 7,000 yards to slightly more than 5,600 yards. You can see the course ratings and the slope ratings and the par. This chart on the right shows in 2019, an individual with a 15.0 handicap index would have been an 18 from tee set number 1, a 17 from tee sets 2 and 3, and a 16 from tee set number 4. That's prior to par being added to the system in the calculation. You can see for 2020, the difference. Tee set number 1, this 15.0 now becomes a 20 for their course handicap. A 17 from tee set number 2, a 15 from tee set number 3, and a 13 from tee set number 4. Many times in the past, we would receive questions from individuals saying, how can I only move 1 or 2 shots when the course is more than 1,000 yards apart? Now that par has been brought into the formula, you can see the spread. It goes from a 2-shot swing to a 7-shot swing. No longer does this have to be calculated manually. It is now part of the formula. If the course rating is higher than par, the course handicap will go up. If the course rating is lower than par, the course handicap will go down. The second addition to the system is now a playing handicap. And this is when handicap allowances are used in various formats of play. Course handicaps are adjusted to make the competition equitable. The adjusted course handicap will be referred to as a playing handicap. Here you see the calculation process. On the right side, you see the calculation move through 15, 85% brings it to a 13. If different tees are used by different genders, a player's playing handicap is adjusted by the difference in par. So just to review, the handicap index, as it always has been, is calculated to what we now call a course handicap. If the event being played brings allowances in, such as 85%, 90% of the course handicap, it will be adjusted to what is now called a playing handicap. How many scores are needed as a minimum to obtain a handicap index? It is now 54 holes made up of any combination of 9 or 18-hole rounds. It used to be 5 18-hole rounds. Now it is 3 18-hole rounds, or 54 holes. There's no time limit on the completion of the submission for these scores. Maximum handicap index. The new one is 54.0. This speaks to two key principles of the World Handicap System. The first is to be inclusive and accessible as possible. And the second is to make it as easy as possible for golfers to maintain a handicap index. Under our old system, for men, the maximum index was 36.4. For women, it was 40.4. Now for all genders, it's 54.0. Maximum score for handicap purposes. This is something we've adopted from the rest of the world. It is now net double bogey. A player's maximum hole score for handicap purposes, ensuring bad holes don't impact a player's handicap too severely. Here's how we arrive at the number. It is par plus 2 plus or minus strokes given or received on a hole. A more definitive example, a player with a course handicap of 11 receives 1 stroke on the first 11 allocated stroke holes. On a par 4, the stroke index of 6, the player's net double bogey score is calculated as follows. We take par, which is 4, plus the 2 shots for a double bogey, plus the 1 stroke they receive for their allocation, gives them a max score of 7. The important part of this to remember is always par plus 2 to start with, and then any strokes they would receive, or if they are a plus player, give back to the golf course, will calculate the max score for the individual on that given hole. Here's an application of how the net double bogey adjustment works. You see this golfer here with a course handicap of 18. And on the 17th hole, they scored an 8. The maximum score that they would be allowed to take would be a 7. It's a par 4 hole plus 2, which is 6, plus the 1 handicap stroke they would get would be a 7. So their gross score is a 95. Net double bogey adjustment of -1. Their postable score is a 94. Their playing handicap is a 15. We used the course handicap. In this particular competition, the course handicap is 18. It was a competition which used a percentage which lowered the person's playing handicap to a 15, but we do not use playing handicap when calculating the net double bogey adjustment. It always works off of the course handicap. The guidelines for the most likely score. This is no different than we've had in the past here in the United States, so this is more review. When a player starts but does not complete a hole, the score recorded for handicap purposes most likely score using the following guidelines. The position of the ball is on the putting green within 5 feet of the hole. Add 1 additional stroke. Between 5 feet and 20 yards from the hole, add 2 to 3 additional strokes, depending on the position of the ball, difficulty of the green, and the ability of the player. And beyond 20 yards from the hole, add 3 or 4 additional strokes. These are guidelines to be utilized by the player, because it's always in the player's discrepancy to determine what the additional strokes would be. If there's an issue with that, it will go to the committee at the club, but these guidelines should always be used. If a hole is not played, it's net par. Again, we used to term this as par plus. For example, the hole is declared out of play by the committee for maintenance or renovation purposes. Acceptability of scores. The scores must be made under the rules of golf and the modified rules of golf for players with disabilities. Scores from an authorized format of play, which meets all the provisions set out within the rules of handicapping. In our country, match play rounds are considered authorized formats of play. Even if you do not finish, if the match is over after 16 holes, an 18-hole round is to be posted. In competitions that are multi-ball or better ball events, even if one of the conditions of the competition is to pick up if you are out of the hole and your partner has already finished the hole, you still post scores for handicap purposes. As this bullet point points out, that scores both in match and stroke play, multi-ball and team competitions, anytime a player picks up before completing the hole, as long as the minimum number of holes is completed. You must be accompanied by at least one other person. Can be a caddy or a non-playing companion. The person does not need to be playing golf with you as long as they can attest your score. It could be a caddy. It could be another individual riding along. It could be a child. It could be a grandchild. They have to have the ability to count and to attest your score, but they do not need to be playing golf. Scores on all courses with a current rating and slope rating made during an active season, both at home and away. This is no change for us in the United States and in Chicago because we do have an off season. This is what we've done over the years, so no change here. When a player follows a model local rule, even if the committee has not adopted it. For example, the alternative option to stroke and distance or preferred lies. Last year, when the rules of golf were modified, a new rule was put in that the club could adopt if an individual hit a ball that went out of bounds. They did not have to return to the previous spot. By going through the rules and this local rule being implemented, the individual will be allowed to drop a ball at the approximate point where it did go out of bounds, add the appropriate penalties, and go from there. Even if the club has not adopted that rule, but the group that playing is using that rule and use it correctly, that score is to be posted for handicap purposes. What are some unacceptable scores? It's not acceptable for handicap purposes and must not be posted if the player has been disqualified from a competition for a breach of the rules of golf that might have provided the player with a significant advantage. And the key term here is significant advantage. For example, using a non-conforming club. Other examples of unacceptable scores include alternate shot or foursomes, scrambles, when being coached, for example, during a playing lesson, treatment of 9-hole scores, combining. This is no change to what we have done in the past years. Combining 2 9-hole scores to create an 18-hole score differential. The one change is that if a player now plays between 7 and 13 holes, then the 9-hole score will be posted and combined with the next 9-hole score. Previously, it was 7 through 12 holes. So now it has been bumped to 13. One other important aspect of the WHS is there is no longer a 9-hole handicap index. Under the USGA system, an individual who only played 9 holes could have had a 9-hole handicap index. It would have been designated with an N behind it. It might have been an 11.6 N or a 9.2 N. under the World Handicap System, every golfer, regardless of whether they play only 9 holes at a time or not, will have an 18-hole handicap index. For those that play in 9-hole leagues or only play 9 holes, they will be able to see what their course handicap is through technology, through a website, our app on the handicap kiosk. And we will also, as we move into the system of development, be able to print reports. But again, it's important to remember that 9-hole handicap indexes no longer exist within the world system. Everyone will have an 18-hole handicap index.